So an ASIC is an application-specific integrated circuit. It is a chip that is specifically designed to mine a certain cryptocurrency or a certain hashing algorithm. The issue with ASICs as a whole is that there's only really 2 or 3 companies that really step into the space as manufacturers. So really we have Bitmain, Bitfury, and a couple of other ones. But what happens when you have that centralized manufacture process is that 1 or 2 companies owns nearly all of the rights to the hashing power or the distribution rights to the hashing power for a cryptocurrency. So what happens when you have a manufacturer who is so centralized? It really creates a quasi-centralized mining system. Now, these miners can still be bought by individuals, but there was cases even in 2016, I think it was, where Bitmain was shown to have a secret backdoor in a lot of their miners where they could literally turn off half of the miners in the entire world and crash the Bitcoin hash rate. So that's kind of what you want to avoid with centralization in mining. And that's kind of what ASICs give you at the moment. Now, there is a big argument about whether ASICs can actually be decentralized or not. Say if we use the hashing algorithm like SHA-3, which was much more easy to make an ASIC for, especially in SHA-3's case. Then we could have lots of manufacturers stepping into the space and manufacturing ASICs and giving those out to the community. What we want to get to is a level where I can go down to my local computer hardware store and buy an ASIC on the shelf, because that is the level it is at with GPUs. I can go and I can set up a Monero mining rig with consumer level hardware, which means that the process is much more decentralized. Someone in Australia can mine and someone in Estonia can mine. The only differentiation there is power cost. So that's the vision of ASIC resistance. Someone releases an ASIC and the cryptocurrency has to make the decision, or the developers have to make the decision. Do they fork away and deal with the issues of forking, or do they go with the ASIC and commit themselves to maybe there's only going to be 2 or 3 manufacturers for ASICs in the entire world, and those are going to be the people that control the distribution for the hashing power. Monero and Ethereum, to a certain extent, I think are going to take the other side, which is to fork away, which is to slightly change your hashing algorithm every so often, or every time you find out that there's an ASIC being developed. So an ASIC is literally a physical representation of the hashing algorithm. So if you are able to change the software, the hashing algorithm, just slightly, they would literally have to build a new machine, right? And that costs millions of dollars in research and development. So the idea that Monero is having is that every 6 months that they're going to change the hashing algorithm slightly. And that should prevent ASICs from coming on board. But whether that is good to do in the long term has some consequences. So every time you fork, you also create the possibility that you will introduce a critical bug into your hashing algorithm. You also create the possibility that you're centralizing things towards the developers, because they're the people who are going to decide whether an algorithm goes in or not. And if a company comes to one of the developers who knows what's going to happen beforehand, they could develop an ASIC that is future-proof from that change. There's a lot of issues with FPGA miners, which are more programmable than ASICs, that if you made a small change, then you would be able to reprogram that FPGA and there would be no performance lost. There's a lot of things to consider when you go down this forking model. And I think it's not going to be the model that we use in the end. I think there are better models out there. So we're exploring stuff like provably ASIC-resistant hashing algorithms, or stuff like Argon 2 and Cuckoo Cycle. So there's a couple of things out there that are kind of exploring this space already, and we're looking into those kind of ideas. But at the moment, we're maintaining that we will be ASIC resistant, and in the future, we will reassess what options there are on the table to maintain an equitable distribution of the hash rate. We don't want 2 or 3 companies creating all of the ASICs and distributing that out, because we believe that's pretty centralized.